All right. One of the things as I look at this, and again, I'm tackling this because I'm hearing it in other people and I'm feeling it in myself. So I'm really solving one of my own problems.
Mm-hmm.
And I think there's a degree of belief. I'm not
Mm-hmm.
consistent because I don't believe that me doing this every day will pay off. This business podcast, the Two Business Guys Mastermind, uncovers for you secrets and share tips and tricks to entrepreneurship as they mastermind on how to have startup, operational, and overall business success so that you can go on to get better results. Enjoy. So, Rob, here's the big question. I'm asking this of a lot of people, and that is, why haven't you made $1 million in 1 year? Right now, of course, I'm not going to ask you that because you're rich. No, just kidding, y'all. But that becomes this question, and everybody keeps coming back. I'm asking a lot of the people that are in the facilitation space. I'm asking people that are in the
Mm-hmm.
coaching space, in the entrepreneurship space of their businesses. Why haven't you made at least $1 million in
Yeah.
1 year? And you know what keeps coming back, Rob? Consistency.
Consistency. Yeah. Nah,
So
it
I
makes
want to talk
perfect sense.
about that today, is
Yeah.
that consistency. What is it that we're missing? How
Mm-hmm.
can we cure it? What do we need to do? And I'm going to be building a whole thing around this, y'all. But I wanted to get in, and we do our
Yeah.
talks every week,
Yeah.
y'all. And it's
Yeah.
almost like therapy for us, but business
Definitely
therapy.
get it all out.
But this is it. Imagine if.
Inconsistency is a huge. I love the fact that you brought up this topic because I think so often for me, there's a lot of shame around inconsistency, right? There's a lot of feeling of guilt and shame of like,
Mm,
why aren't we more consistent? Why can't I? And especially when you're in entrepreneurship, because you, I've seen your graphic on this, the entrepreneur roller coaster, on how in a given day you don't have consistent feelings, let alone over time. And I want to ask you and kind of let you talk a little bit about on what are some of the things that you have seen that are major kind of problems that entrepreneurs face with consistency.
all right. One of the things as I look at this, and again, I'm tackling this because I'm hearing it in other people and I'm feeling it in myself. So I'm really solving one of my own problems.
Mm-hmm.
And I think there's a degree of belief. I'm not
Mm-hmm.
consistent because I don't believe that me doing this every day will pay off.
Mm-hmm.
We will
Mm-hmm.
consistently go to work, to a job.
Mm-hmm.
We will, because somewhere along the line we have been taught or told or shown you get a check after the end of it.
Right.
Right. So there's a degree of, I believe if I put in this work, I'm going to get. Now,
Right.
it may not be worth my time or they're underpaying me, but we will
It's consistent.
consistently do that. So that's
Yeah.
not to suggest that we haven't shown it in other areas, but when it comes to entrepreneurship and starting businesses and stuff like that, it just disappears. Right.
That's powerful, right? Like just that fact, right? We've been conditioned, and or not even conditioned, conditioned is the wrong word. We've been taught, go to work, 2 weeks later, you get a check. Go to work, 2 weeks later, you get a check, right? And that consistency led to belief. Like one of the things, one of my mentors said it this way. They said, confidence comes from demonstrated competence, right?
Mm-hmm.
Confidence, or the belief in, right, something,
Mm-hmm.
comes from demonstrated competence, from having done that thing over and over and over again, such that the belief can be there. So when we're looking at entrepreneurs, right, how do you develop that type of confidence? And do you go for the big things? Do you go for the things that are, I have to do this in order to get that? Or how do you start it, right? Like, do you start by making sales consistently and then just maintaining that consistency of the things that are making you sales, right? But how do you stay focused on
That's what I'm curious about. Right. And I think sometimes I was remembering from some books, when I started putting in some time around this problem and looking at it in the mirror, and I started going, okay, I like some concepts that are out there about don't worry about the goal, worry about the system. In other words, the process. Now, there's something to that. Then I started also thinking about some of the painters and sculptors back in the day. They had a motto, right? And that is somebody paid them to come in, Michelangelo or whomever,
right.
come in and do this sculpture. Yeah. So they had some income, or I can't remember the name of it right now, but the apprentice, right? Whether it's apprentice, whatever it is, they knew that they were going to be okay. So there was a belief that I'll be fine even if I'm not getting paid every week. I'm going to eat and whatever it is. But yet in the field of startups and in the field of starting businesses, and we can't, and I felt this way, y'all, so I'm not sitting here throwing stones. I remember I wrote a whole book on it called The Reluctant Entrepreneur, and it was about being on the fence constantly.
Right. Now, I agree with you. I think in my time, and I've been reading a lot of books about this recently, about, just building businesses, business growth, stuff like that. There's a couple of things that I've heard that seem counterintuitive, but make so much sense now that I look at it. When I've looked at the different entrepreneurs that I've dealt with and that I've seen, the successful ones and the ones who may not have been successful, but they're not struggling with consistency. There's two things that I've seen that are extremely important, and I think they kind of are interconnected. The first one is the ability to stay focused on one thing. And then the second one is the absence of a fear of not surviving, right? So one of the things that I've seen a lot of the businesses, and when you look at venture capital companies, when you look at different things like that, what a lot of people will do, and the most successful entrepreneurs that I've seen that kind of scale fast, what I've seen them do, even when we look at Daniel Patrick Moran's book and all the rest of the type of stuff, one of the things that I see, and it's never in the book. Here's the thing that's interesting. Like, I had to, you have to glean this from knowing the story. Like you were just talking about, we were talking about James Clear, knowing the story before the story. What I've seen so often is that certain entrepreneurs will do one of two things. They will either have a job that is taking care of their bills, and they will be building their business on the side. But by building their business, they're building one thing, focusing on one thing and making that thing work. Like James Clear was writing a blog. He had a job. He was writing a blog, and he was just consistently writing that blog. He got better. He built the blog to where it was an income stream. Then he could get off his job. Right. And that was that transition. What I've noticed with so many entrepreneurs is that when they're not worried about their Maslow's hierarchy of needs on the bottom, food, water, shelter, and safety and security, when they've got bills paid, when they've got, right? And it doesn't have to be that you have a job. It could be that you have a year's worth of expenses saved. Whatever it is, it's that you know that you don't have to make money from this right now. You can be consistent until it starts making money, instead of going and trying different things to see what's going to make money. Right? Because the entrepreneurs that are constantly, which breaks your focus. And because that goes to the second piece that I heard, and I can't remember what book I was reading. It might have been in 10X is easier than 2X, but I can't remember. But one of the things it talks about, I heard an author talking about when business owners are trying to make their first million, the way you make your first million is you find one thing and you do it over and over and over and over and over again.
Yeah, I've heard that. Yeah.
Right. And you do it well, right? And you hear it in Jim Collins when he talks about the flywheel concept. You hear it, Alex Hormozy talks about it like this. There's a whole bunch of different people that talk about that idea that you just do one thing. And so many of us, myself included, this is one of the things that I struggle with. And I'm coming to the hard one understanding that, like, we're going to get good at one thing. Like, because we sell a whole bunch of stuff, we're going to get good at one thing, and we're going to sell a whole bunch of that. And then that's going to fund us branching out into other things. But that ability to stay focused and stay consistent with that one thing, I think, has a lot to do with not allowing things that are literally more important, like where am I going to eat? Where am I going to sleep? Where am I going to get water from? to enter into that scenario. What do you think about with the people that you've seen and stuff like that? How does that strike you?
This is interesting, and I'm glad you brought that up. It's kind of like, since I've been reading a lot of James Clear's stuff. He says he essentially didn't make money for 5 years. He says, but I kept seeing progress with the newsletter. He kept seeing progress. In other words, it was growing. And he used that to springboard into the other thing. So he could see that a part of his plan was working. So that kept him bolstered, because he said it. He says, if I had been doing this and I had no idea that it was going to work out, then it would have been a wrap. So what brings me to your question is, as I think about one or the other, would consistency solve the focus problem? Or would focus solve the consistency problem? So to what James Clear said, he says, it's a book about habits where he talks about deliberate practice, but he chose one thing that people can get with because it would sell better. So I wonder if why I'm doing this can be that, right? It's a book about focus, but I'm talking about consistency.
Yeah, exactly.
Because everybody seems to struggle with it, but not the other way around all the time. They know they're unfocused, but they really know they're inconsistent with a lot of stuff.
Right. No, I like that. And the ability to focus is the ability to knock out distractions and therefore to maintain a consistent focus, right? Like focus is consistency inherently. So now that makes sense. I think, just listening to it, it's funny to me, right? Because so many entrepreneurs, right? We've coached hundreds of entrepreneurs, right? So many people struggle with consistency, and I think so much of it is. But there was a nugget in what you said, though. I think it has to do with belief. Because even when you said James Clear, he was like, if I didn't believe that this was gonna work, then
right, because he knew that email list would get him a publishing deal, or at least he believed it would, because they want a built-in audience.
Exactly. It's the nature of the business. But the thing that I think is interesting about that whole concept is it's harder to focus if you don't believe, and it's harder to believe when you're believing for this thing to pay all of your bills rather than just for this thing to keep doing what it's doing and grow incrementally. Yeah, you remember this. We talked, and James Clear talks about this in Atomic Habits, right? 1% improvement a day for a year is 3,700% improvement. It doesn't have to grow a lot. You just have to believe that it's getting better
every day.
But you have to have a year to get that 3,700% growth. The first month, it hasn't grown that much.
It's nothing.
Right? And if it's not able to feed you, it might not be able to feed you after 3,700% growth. It took him 5 years.
Interesting. And that, I think, as I go through the cure to inconsistency, right? Then with all the things that I've done in terms of, helping people monetize stuff, maybe that's a part of the conversation that we'll have. I know, listen, everybody, when you're solving your own problem first, it always works. Because guess what? You solve the problem, and then you're going to be inviting others to try this. Yeah.
Right.
You need it for yourself.
Right. The solution is valuable because you had the problem. You were the ideal client.
Every time when I'm trying to help someone, create this digital real estate and online properties that I talk about, I'm helping them monetize their life, you leveraging that approach. It's always, hey, let's just do one thing, one step. And all these different ideas start coming to me in terms of, I remember I was reading Peaks and Valleys by Spencer Johnson, right? Dr. Spencer Johnson. And that's not his most famous book. It's Who Moved My Cheese is the most famous one. But Peaks and Valleys talks about when you're in the valley, just keep going. But most people stop. They get stuck.
Yes.
And I know, Rob, you had a book that you wanted to bring up. And hey, y'all know what we do here. We love talking about these leverage moments, these books, these ideas, and that's what we want to give you, right? If you hear something, you see some. I was in a meeting the other day, and I says, "Look, gold nuggets just fell on the floor. I don't see no satchels." Right? It was funny, right? I said, "Satchels, pick up the gold, take it home with you." So if we're dropping
Exactly.
some gold
Exactly.
nuggets, grab your satchels.
Yeah.
And here we got
Yeah.
another one in the book that you
No, yeah,
read.
this one and this I think it fits a lot with what we've been talking about today because there's a book that I'm reading right now called Buy Back Your Time by Dan Martell. And the thing that I realized, right, and this was an interesting realization for me because, right, I am a time management coach, time management guy. I wrote a book on time management. And one of the things that I realized in my entrepreneurial journey was I was really good at mastering my time as a professional. I was really good at setting boundaries and letting people know where they stand and making sure that I had time for all of my different roles as a professional because all of those roles were largely um, prescribed, right? As a professional, I know where the boundaries of my work are and what that exists. But when you move to entrepreneurship, it changes. And I noticed myself struggling with consistency, struggling with figuring out how to build systems that work for this thing so that I can be consistent. And what I realized was the danger, the difference that I struggled with was when you're an entrepreneur, you're in charge of what's important. You're in charge of what's good. You're in charge of believing in that thing so that you can be consistent. And it's not as if the system is already built for you. It's not as if the system already works. There's nothing there. When you're creating something new, there's nothing there to tell you that this thing is going to work. Right? There's nobody that's done it before to say, just do this and it works. Because every time you're doing something new, it's different from what they did, even if it's similar.
That is
And
so important.
yeah,
Circumstances are different. Their time in. He said something, James Clear said, that I don't mean to cut you off, but James Clear said
no,
something.
it's good.
He says he doesn't know if he could even write a book, not another book, but the same way. He says because when he was writing this one, he had all this time, but it was before he had wife, kids, the whole thing. He said he would literally spend, he said like 15 to 30 hours writing and editing. That's like a job.
Exactly.
He says, I can't do it now because my attention is, and I've
Right. I don't
always
got
been
time like that.
asking that question of people that were successful at a time. They
Huh?
got their money, and now
And then they
they're
get
not putting
family.
out the
Then
same
they
kind
get
of.
right, right. It's a different thing when you're single and you only have to take care of you versus when. And even with the professional side, I was able to note to articulate all of that. But what this book does and what I love about it, and the premise is in the title, right? It gives you a guiding principle, which is everything you should be doing in your entrepreneurship journey is to buy back your time.
I love that.
Nothing that you're doing should be, from an entrepreneur perspective, nothing that you're doing should be something where you're spending a lot of your time doing it because that's inherently unscalable
Y'all see
because
that?
there's only 24 hours in a day.
Gold nugget. Pick it up. Another one you dropped, and I'm not sure if y'all aware of this, but did you notice Rob said master time, not manage it?
Yes.
That's a whole book in itself. That's a whole course in that's a whole class in itself. I guarantee you, I got some apps right now. I can go and see if a course like that is selling. Right? Master your time. Don't try to time. I told somebody the other day, I says, time is undefeated. You can't manage it. You can't manage it.
Exactly.
Time says, I'm only giving you 24. What you got? You try to go above that. Nope.
Exactly.
It is undefeated in what it will give you. But when you start talking about mastering those 24 now,
that's the key. And
there's
as a
something in there,
professional,
Rob.
right? And as a professional, your ability to master your time means that you are a commodity that commands more money for your time. But here's the funny thing, and this is the like the shackles that kind of broke off my head. As an entrepreneur, you're trying to not get paid for your time. You're trying to have your time be irrelevant to how much you get paid. As an entrepreneur, you want for you to not have any time in it, but still get paid. And because that's the reality, then you have to be doing things that are helping you to buy back your time. So the book goes through, and I think it's a great book. Like I said, Dan
Man,
Martell, I don't get any money off of it, but I think it's a phenomenal book. Dan Martell, Buy Back Your Time. Because what he goes through are a bunch of things like tools, tricks, hacks, and all the rest of that. But just the paradigm shift in understanding that as an entrepreneur, you're trying to get your time back in everything you do.
It
So
seems
what he
like
says is,
everything we
don't
do is
hire.
about time, isn't it?
Exactly. And so what he says is, he's
Retire.
like one really quick thing is, don't hire people for to get things done. Don't hire people to get outcomes done. Hire people to get your time back.
That is so brilliant. I think you may have mentioned this book before, but it goes into that idea is of how do we stay consistent? How do we get our focus? It could be something as small of a trigger as, well, where have you bought back your time so you can work on this consistency?
Exactly.
Where have you
and
bought
so
back
you
your time
leverage.
so you can be more focused? And I'm going to tell you, man, I'm hearing it so much lately. And you said something earlier off camera that made me think about a client that is failing under the weight of their own ideas. They got so many things going that they're not appreciating time being given to one. And you know who I'm talking about.
I know
time
exactly.
being given to one. They're not appreciating it because they got so much other stuff going.
They can't even see it. They can't even value. They can't even they can't even, like you said, appreciate, but they can't, they're not even aware of what value is being put into it. And so, of course, the feeling, if you're not aware of something, right, the feeling is that it doesn't exist. Man. And yeah,
I read this and we'll wrap up, but it's somebody said this. Who said that? If you have more than 3 priorities in a year, you have none.
Ooh, yeah. There was,
and it was some famous Harvard. I think it's a Harvard person.
Yeah, Darren Hardy does this thing.
He talked about
I do a lot of mentorship with Darren Hardy. Yeah, and the guy who he's got this billionaire mentor of his that he talks
Ben
about.
Hardy. I'm sorry, I heard that.
Yeah, not Ben Hardy yet, but this is Darren Hardy. So this guy does the billionaire friend of his. He's like, he has one thing that he accomplishes every day. Now that thing may take an hour. That thing may take 8 hours. But he has one thing that he focuses on every day. Still haven't figured out how to do it yet, but I'm wrapping my mind around really shrinking to, and the whole point is, it has to be something that'll be impactful, that'll move the needle for it to become that one thing for the day. But that's what he does, and then he shuts his day down. Like he's off work. Beautiful. He's not doing work no more.
He's buying. You see how he's doing that? That is so incredible when you hear stuff like that, and we look at it and go, yeah, I can do it. I've tried it. The immersive. I'm only doing. Somebody says, you do a lot. I says, yeah, but I only do one thing in a day until done.
Yep.
Then I spin up the next.
Yep.
Right? Because of the switching cost. And this is stuff we'll talk about. I'll jump into this when I'm trying to cure this inconsistency thing.
Yeah.
I'm going to try to cure it in myself. If y'all want to come along, right? You can subscribe to the channel. You can, watch as we roll it out. But that becomes a part of it, right? And then in the book, Rob, what was your book that you did on time management? You talked a lot about it.
Yeah. So it's Thriving in Chaos.
Thriving in Chaos. That's right. And there's something else. Is that the one that's like stop moving the goalpost?
Yeah. That's the one. Yeah, that's the one. And like I said, for professionals, especially for those of you all that are working a job and trying to get ready to start a business or thinking about it, right? First thing you got to do is you got to master your time. So that book is perfect for when you're in that situation where you're thinking about being an entrepreneur or you're kind of stuck in both worlds. And then for those of you all that have kind of made that jump or that are in the entrepreneur space, just know that there's more that you need after you've become a professional who's mastered your time. You have to then become an entrepreneur who's buying back your time.
Ooh, man, I got to go, y'all, because I just got too many ideas with the whole master versus management. And, okay. Y'all know what I'm talking about, right? All right. So everybody, we'll see you on the next one, because this one was just, I got to get going and get some work done and get consistent. I'll be bringing that stuff to you. See you then.
Have a good one, everybody.